Yeah, so in the therapeutic world today, MDMA is mostly being studied for PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. There have been some other, I would say, like smaller, more pilot studies completed as well. MDMA for depression and anxiety associated with life-threatening illness. That was one study. And then there was another one that was about social anxiety in adults with autism. There's also a lot of excitement about the idea of using MDMA in couples therapy, probably because of those empathogenic types of effects or the ability to kind of generate a state of empathy for another. But really, the sort of lion's share of the data and information that's out there focuses on MDMA for PTSD, and that's actually what's in phase 3 clinical trials at the moment. So in these studies, it's not just taking MDMA, it's MDMA assisted therapy. And the way that this kind of works is that there's an initial dose of MDMA. And in phase 3, they're using 120 milligrams. And then they offer a booster somewhere between 90 minutes and 2.5 hours later. The booster is precisely 50% of the initial dose. So they're starting with 120, the booster would be 60. They're using a therapist dyad, usually a male and a female, for the MDMA assisted therapy sessions themselves. They're doing psychotherapy before, between, and after MDMA sessions, and they're really structuring a series of MDMA sessions rather than just a single sort of session. And I think this is like a big kind of counseling point that I have for persons is like, don't expect the mystical bullet on your first experience. Like, this is a process, and you probably need at least 2, and maybe even more than that, 3 administrations to really get the sort of effects that you're after. So the dosing, again, that they use in clinical trials in phase 3 is 120 plus 60. In their phase 2 trials, they sort of had a range. They did 75 to 125 to start, depending on the study. And that made the boosters to be, somewhere between 37.5 and 62.5 milligrams. They essentially found that all the doses worked. Like, they didn't really find that, well, one dose is much more effective than the others. So I think that, this is what they're doing in clinical trials. I don't think I would go higher than that because I'm worried about neurotoxic effects of MDMA at higher doses. But if for whatever reason you wanted to be slightly more conservative with the dosing, I don't think that would be a problem or really significantly impact the efficacy. So as far as how is MDMA helping PTSD, it seems that the release of serotonin by MDMA, getting a little bit ahead there, I haven't talked about pharmacodynamics yet, but the release of serotonin by MDMA can diminish emotional reactivity or fear. Like, it really helps to kind of calm the brain's fear centers or fear responses. And compared to, I would say, like a classic hallucinogen like psilocybin or LSD that really tends to have this ego dissolving and mystical experience type of quality to it, usually the sense of self is very much retained with MDMA. It's an enactogen, meaning to touch within. So it's like to know oneself better rather than to kind of dissolve the world and become one with things. That's more the mystical types of effect. So the person is going to know who they are, but they're also going to have a lot less of a fear response. And this really opens a window where a person can emotionally process things that are associated with a lot of fear, like traumatic memories. And the sort of emotional defense mechanisms are overall suspended for a period of time. Kind of going back to what I said a moment ago about, don't expect the mystical bullet on the first experience. What you see on this slide are some results from the first phase 3 study that's been completed with MDMA. You've got blue and placebo on the left and red with MDMA assisted therapy on the right. And kind of the lightest red box is a 50% reduction in symptoms. Great. They're symptomatically better, but usually remission, or the darkest red box down here, is prognostic of long-term persistent feeling better. And what you notice is that after one session, it's less than a coin flip. It's 40-something% whether you even get a 50% reduction in symptoms, and maybe less than 10% actually going to remission. At second session, wow, now you've got 2/3 that have responded. Remission, still not great, still 11-12%. But wow, that third session, now you got 80%, 4 out of 5 people have had a 50% reduction in symptoms. And looking at this remission bar, it literally tripled compared to the second session. So it seems like that third session makes a big difference for a lot of people. And I think this kind of graph like really speaks to almost the necessity of setting up a couple, 2 or 3 sessions for somebody and really framing it from like, we're going to be doing a psychotherapy intervention over a period of months here with just a few MDMA sessions in there. So you should think of it as one big process where these sessions, they're going to build upon each other, and you're actually probably most likely going to feel better as it continues, and perhaps temper your expectations a little bit about what that first session is going to do. Exactly. Yeah, it's a big psychotherapy intervention that happens to involve psychedelics to kind of, I'll say, grease the process, really enhance things. But it's sort of the perspective of, I'm just going to eat MDMA and my trauma is going to be fixed. Is there's some holes in that one.